Have you ever wondered why, despite all your effort, you still feel like the world was built for someone else? Why every attempt to fit in seems to demand that you betray yourself a little, and why the more you try to mold yourself, the further you feel from who you are?
Carl Jung would say there is a reason for that, and it's not just psychological. It is spiritual, archetypal, ancestral. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That sentence from Jung, which sounds like an ancient verdict whispered by an old oracle, reveals more than a theory. It points to the silent ache of the chosen ones, not because they are special, but because they can no longer lie to themselves. All of us at times treat others unfairly with distrust, but the chosen, they do that to themselves. They doubt their own worth because they never learned to value themselves without someone else's gaze. They cannot prosper in the normal world because their soul refuses the game. And that refusal has a price, a very high price, and this is where our journey begins. Let's start with what no one dares to say. Being yourself, truly yourself, is expensive. And I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about exile, about not belonging. I'm talking about that quiet sensation of always standing one step outside the stage where life seems to happen. Carl Jung would call this the conflict between the persona and the self. The persona is the mask, the thing you wear to be accepted. It is the I'm fine when you are collapsing inside. It is the I'll take this job when something in you knows you would die slowly there. But the self, the self is the spark, the deepest, most real part of who you are. It whispers inconvenient truths. It rejects what is comfortable when the comfortable kills the soul. And then what you call financial failure happens. But in reality, it is your soul refusing to participate in a system where money is earned by selling what you do not believe in. The apparent failure is actually loyalty to truth. It is your unconscious saying, I will not trade peace for a paycheck. You tried to fit in, you tried to be normal, you tried to smile in meetings where everything in you screamed that you didn't belong. You tried to follow rules where the dress code, sell ready-made speeches. But there is one thing you could not abandon, your awareness, and that has kept you broke. Not for lack of competence, but for excess of lucidity. Many who feel chosen were shaped by childhoods of conditional affection. They were the children who pleased others to be seen, the ones who mediated adult conflicts as if they were old souls in small bodies, the ones who learned they were only lovable when they were useful. Those children grew up, and today they confuse love with sacrifice, validation with survival, money with worth. That is why today, every time you charge for something, it feels like you are apologizing. Every time someone sees you, something in you recoils. You learn to dim your light because shining always brought punishment. Jung would call that a complex, a knot of memory and emotion. But I will go further. It is an altar where you still sacrifice parts of yourself to be accepted in a world that does not see your value. Being is expensive, because being means stopping the performance. It means stripping off characters. It means facing someone else's gaze and still not turning away from your own. And that, to a world that prefers masks, is intolerable. But what happens when someone insists on being authentic, even broke, even alone? They become dangerous, because their existence questions the entire theater, and maybe that is why the chosen ones disturb so much, even without saying a word. But let me tell you a secret. There is a kind of silence that is not empty. It is fertile. It is the silence before the sprout, before dawn. It is when the world seems to forget you, but it is only the soul asking for space to bloom without haste. Do not be deceived. The soul's time does not follow the world's clock. You are not late. You are being prepared. And in that process, perhaps the greatest courage is not to rush to fill the void, but to inhabit it, to sit with it, to look it in the eye, and discover that what once felt like loneliness was presence, your presence. Because in the end, being is expensive, but not being costs everything. Sometimes the most decisive no of our lives is never spoken out loud. It is a shiver, a nausea disguised as boredom, a fatigue that rest does not cure. It is the body refusing, before the mind understands why. Jung said the unconscious speaks through symptoms, dreams, and repetitions, and maybe what you called laziness, self-sabotage, or lack of focus is actually a silent and sacred refusal, a refusal of the soul, that part of you that still remembers what you came here to do, even when you forget. How many times have you forced yourself to follow what looked like the right path? A degree that said nothing to your essence, a job that seemed promising but dried you out from the inside, a routine where you dragged yourself like a zombie with a badge. You may have gone, you may have tried, but something in you never arrived. And that is where the refusal begins, not as an act of rebellion, but as a reflex of fidelity to what is true. The soul does not negotiate with falsehood. It only goes silent. And when it goes silent, the rest of life begins to scream. Maybe that is why you felt paralyzed in front of opportunities that looked too good. Maybe that is why you abandoned projects that were going well, but made no sense. Maybe that is why, even surrounded by possibilities, you felt an inexplicable emptiness. Refusal is not failure. It is deep discernment. It is the self-whispering, "This is not your path," even if everyone says it is. There is a scene in The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger where the main character, Holden, says he would like to be the one who prevents children from falling off the cliff. That metaphor is the portrait of refusal. You may walk with the world, but if your soul senses an abyss ahead, it locks. It refuses. And that is when you get confused, because the culture of performance will call you weak. Superficial spirituality will tell you to raise your vibration, and the corporate world will say you don't have the profile. But you know that deep down you are stronger than they think, because it takes strength to refuse what slowly destroys you. It takes strength not to follow the herd. It takes strength to stand still in the middle of collective haste and listen to your own soul. This refusal can hurt. It isolates, it distances, it silences. But it also protects, because the price of adapting might be the loss of oneself, and that, yes, would be a true collapse. When Jung spoke of individuation, he was not talking about becoming enlightened. He was talking about becoming integrated, integrating light and shadow, courage and fear, desire and limit. And refusal is part of that integration. It is the moment when you realize you can no longer pretend, not to others, not to yourself. Maybe you have refused without noticing, refused to work in places where injustice was normalized, refused relationships where your silence was demanded as proof of love, refused lifestyles that required anesthesia to be tolerated. You are not ill, you are lucid, and lucidity, in a world of masks, looks like madness. Now let me tell you a story. There is a woman who, since childhood, felt pain in her chest every time she had to lie to be liked. She grew up hearing she needed to smile more, be quieter, accept more. She did everything right, college, internship, promotions, but every victory felt like betrayal. One day in the middle of a meeting, her body froze. She could no longer speak. It was not an anxiety attack. It was the body screaming for a forgotten truth. She walked out. She resigned, with no plan, no safety net. The world called it insanity. But her soul called her back. Today she is not rich yet, but she wakes up whole. And that, my friend, is a different kind of wealth. The refusal was the portal. And maybe it is becoming yours too. Maybe everything you are living that looks like despair is just a threshold, the exact point where the old no longer shelters you and the new has not yet taken shape. Stay, breathe, trust, because the refusal of today may be the freedom of tomorrow. Have you ever noticed that some of your greatest qualities nobody sees, or worse, those are precisely the ones the world seems to ignore? The sensitivity that reads a room, the kind of listening that welcomes without invading, the intuition that senses when something is wrong, even when everything looks perfect, right. In the social game, those virtues don't shine. They're not headline material on a resume, and they don't earn you applause in meetings. But they are hidden gold. And Jung taught us, the gold of the soul lives in the shadow. What you hide, or what the world never knew how to value, may be the key to your real prosperity. And then comes the dilemma. How do you turn invisible virtues into tangible value? How do you live off what is subtle without selling out or betraying yourself? The answer is in one word, translation. You must learn to translate essence into offer, feeling into solution, presence into proposal. But wait, that's not something you learn in a marketing course. You learn it in silence, in the deep listening to what you already do, effortlessly, when no one is watching. You know that piece of advice you gave that changed someone's day? That unique way you tell a story, organize chaos, touch without touching? All of that is value. But because it was never recognized as work, you still doubt you deserve to be paid for it. That's where the game starts to turn. because what the world calls useless may actually be essential. It just needs to be repositioned. Jung said that when we deny parts of ourselves, they don't disappear, they just act in the dark. Now imagine what happens when you begin to illuminate those forgotten talents, when you invite them to the table and say, I see you, and I want to put you in service. What once was suffering becomes a tool, pain becomes language, shame becomes refined empathy. You begin to notice that your scars speak the language of those who are searching for relief. And there are people, many people, ready to pay not for spectacle but for presence, truth, and clarity. But before that, there is a secret inner task. You must untie yourself from the beliefs that taught you that you only deserve when you're exhausted, that you are only worthy when you're flawless, that success and suffering are Siamese twins. These beliefs live deep. They were planted in childhood, watered with looks, comparisons, silences, and today they bloom as self-sabotage disguised as humility. It is not the world that underestimates you. It is the filter through which you see yourself. Hidden value is this, what you don't see in yourself, but the world needs. You just need to make the courageous move to make it visible. But how? Start small. Don't try to transform everything at once. Choose one part of you that has always been ignored and give it a place, a function, a space. Maybe it's your ability to synthesize ideas, maybe it's your way of listening without judgment, or your creativity in solving problems with simple, beautiful solutions. Now think, how can that become real help? How can that shorten someone's path? Because look, when people don't pay for you, they pay for the bridge you build between chaos and clarity. You are a bridge, and a bridge doesn't need to shout, it only needs to be solid. Hidden value is something revealed in the doing, in repetition, in trust. In the end, it's not about price, it's about presence. And when you put your presence in service, without shame, without fear, without rush, money comes as a reflection, not as validation. Because when the value you deliver comes from what is most authentic in you, you are no longer selling, you are serving. And to serve, when it comes from the soul, is the deepest form of prosperity. Have you ever felt like you were walking behind everyone else, as if your life had paused while others kept moving forward? Marriages, stable jobs, planned trips, plans executed with almost surgical precision, and you there, with a pile of questions no one else seems to be asking. Let me tell you something, maybe the most important thing so far. You are not late, you are on a mission, and true missions do not follow schedules. They follow an inner rhythm. Jung spoke of the time of the self, the time of the soul. That time is different. It is not linear nor obedient. It is deep, chaotic, intuitive. It is the time of those who are being carved from the inside out. The culture we live in worships haste. It's the do it before 30, achieve before 40, succeed before others. But the self, that intimate and authentic core of being, does not rush to fit in. It matures in silence, on the margins, in the dark. And maybe, while you were scolding yourself for being late, your soul was preparing fertile ground. Maybe what looked like stagnation was germination. And now that the first leaves appear, you begin to realize you did not lose time. You became someone capable of holding what is about to come. The slow mission is the one that does not seek applause but meaning. It does not live off displayable achievements, but off inner transformations. It is not guided by other people's goals, but by inner alignment. And that slowness is not a flaw. It is the soul's strategy not to sell itself before its time, not to get lost on the path just because it looks faster. You see, it's like preparing a home for someone you love deeply. You don't throw just anything inside, you care for every detail, you wait for everything to be ready. Not to impress, but to receive. That is what your soul has been doing with your life. It has been waiting for you to be ready not to shine, but to inhabit your truth fully. And then when you least expect it, the fruits begin to appear. People who find you and say, "This is exactly what I was looking for." Projects that once seemed impossible now flow. Ideas that were shelved for years now blossom. Because now you have ballast. Now you can serve, without betraying yourself. Jung said that the encounter with the self is inevitable. You can postpone it, run from it, rationalize it. But one day it comes, usually at the exact moments when everything collapses. And instead of running, you stay. You stay with the pain, with the doubt, with the emptiness. And in that staying, something begins to be born. It is not loud, it is not glamorous, but it is real. And the real is irresistible. The slow mission also teaches you to respect cycles. Not every day is a day to plant. Not every hour is a time to show. There are seasons of retreat, of listening, of integration. While the world screams, produce, show up, win, your soul whispers, deepen, align, be. That is why you felt out of the game, because the game was a different one. Yours is not about competition, it is about contribution. You are not here to win a race, you are here to leave a trace. And yes, sometimes that is exhausting. Watching others accelerate while you step lightly, but look closely. How many of them are truly present? How many actually sleep in peace? How many have built something that does not require masks? Your mission is slow because it is solid, because it is yours, because it is not a replica. Jung said that gold is where we least want to look. And maybe your gold is precisely in the rhythm you keep trying to accelerate. Maybe what you have most avoided, that slowness, that introspection, that delay, is the portal to the kind of life no hurry can build. So if you are to slow down, let it be for love. If you are to go silent, let it be for wisdom. If you are to wait, let it be for integrity. You are not behind, you are on a mission. And the most beautiful mission is the one that does not need to prove itself to be worthy. In the end, maybe everything we have said so far could be summarized in a single quiet whisper. You are not broken, you are in process. It is no coincidence that the system bothers you, not because of weakness, but because of lucidity. You have seen too much, felt too much, remembered what most people forgot, that success without soul is just another form of exile, and that wealth without meaning is just another prison disguised as freedom. Jung taught us that life is not about conquering, but about integrating, and integration is the most courageous path there is. It is saying yes to your own shadow. It is looking your fears in the eye. It is allowing yourself to exist without apologizing for being sensitive, deep, or slow. You are not alone. And maybe the greatest beauty of the journey is this, recognizing that there are others, silent, awake, on mission, walking too, each with their own story, their own pain, and their own courage, but all held by an invisible thread, the refusal to live a life where the soul must hide. And now that you know this, the question changes. It is no longer, how do I fit into the world? And becomes, how do I create a world where I fit whole? That is your mission. And it begins with small, firm, silent steps. But each of them brings you closer to what is real. And the real, when lived with integrity, holds a power no lie can sustain. If you made it this far, breathe with me, not like someone who finishes something, but like someone who's returning home. This video wasn't just content, it was a crossing, and if at any point you felt it was speaking directly to you, it's because it was. Not because I know everything, but because I also needed to hear these words. You know, there was a time when I too felt like a statistical mistake. While everyone else seemed to be moving forward, I collected doubts. The hours didn't flow, the work drained me, and no matter how hard I tried, there was always that feeling of being off rhythm, off logic, off script. I have asked myself, with real anguish, if there was something wrong with me, if I was weak, fragile, too unfit for this world. But with time, and with a lot of pain, I understood. It wasn't weakness, it was loyalty. Loyalty to the quietest and most precious part of myself. It was Jung who gave me the first clues. The idea that the unconscious is not an enemy, but a guide. That what looks like chaos can be process. That the parts of us that hurt are also the ones most capable of healing. And maybe that's why this content was born. Not from the desire to teach, but from the need to bear witness, to leave a record, to look into the eyes of those who feel too deeply and say, I know. Me too. And it's okay, I am grateful that you walked with me this far. Even in silence, even with a tight chest and eyes full of water. Your listening is what turns this monologue into an encounter. This channel, these words, this mission, none of this makes sense without you on the other side, because you are not a number, not a click. You are someone who chose for a few minutes to honor your own depth. And look, that is rare and precious. Thank you for trusting, for allowing yourself to feel, for staying until the end, even when some truths hurt. Even when the mind wanted to run and the heart insisted on staying. I hope that in some way this video was more than information. I hope it was shelter, a mirror, or maybe a seed. If it was, then every second was worth it. Now we get to the most spiritual moment on the internet, asking you to like, comment, and subscribe. I know. This part always sounds kind of robotic, like click the bell to receive enlightenment in the form of notifications. But the truth is, the algorithm doesn't understand soul. It understands clicks. So if this conversation touched some forgotten part of you, help this video reach more people who are also waking up in the middle of the night wondering if everything is wrong or if everything is about to change. Write in the comments an affirmation that can accompany you for the next few days. It can be simple. It can be something like, I refuse to profit from what destroys me, or my slowness is a language, or even a discreet and powerful, I'm still here. Now about the videos that are showing up on your screen, well, I can't say much, but one of them reveals what happens when you finally accept who you are, even if that throws everything around you into chaos. And the other, let's just say it might show you why sometimes, in order to find yourself, you first have to get lost on purpose, choose with your heart. And remember, the journey is slow, but every true step brings you closer to a place where you can finally rest while being yourself. See you in the next video, or, who knows, in the next awakening.